what I wanted to do is bring up some interesting questions and tough questions to see how where we've been since then, changes that's happening, and what you're excited about. But yeah, so let's go and get into it. Whoever wants to answer this question first. So for question number one is no pressure. Is how has your vision for Airbyte evolved since it began?
I would say it hasn't evolved, it has more mature,
Or matured?
in a sense that it's clear for us where we fit in the data stack, what we're trying to achieve, and talking about it. It's simpler where we always think of these three pillars in the data world, which is how you do network, how you do compute, how you do storage. And as Airbyte, as a product, as an open source project, we really fit on the networking piece, which is how do you actually move data from point A to point B? And
Mhm.
this is one of the pillars we see in the data space. So everything that is about the movement is something we want to address.
Okay, no, thank you, thank you. And so to add on top of that, like since Airbyte has begun, right? Since you founded Airbyte, both of you, then what would you say the key milestones that you've achieved since then? Right, from the top of your mind, what are some key milestones since
I
then?
mean, cloud is a big one.
Cloud.
3,000 active users, yeah, of open source. So active user is how many people are using Airbytes every
Mm,
single day as part of their data stack. So that was a big one. A vanity one is like the 10,000 stars
stars
on,
and
on
GitHub.
GitHub.
Yeah.
I think we all about today about usage. That's how we measure the value we bring to the community, and
Mm.
so that's a metric that we're tracking, like daily active usage across open source and cloud. So 3,000 was a big one for us.
That is exciting. I mean, the more people that use our product,
Yeah.
the better. I would agree. And then okay, so then open source is huge, right? Open source is how we began Everybody. It is our like we could say our life and blood. And so at the same time though, we also focus not just on open source users, but even on commercial interests, right? So the question I have in here is how do you maintain the balance between open source development and commercial interest in the company?
Yeah. So that's actually something we've always been very, very transparent about. It's been on our handbook since the beginning, which is we want to bring a very good solution for data movement. But of course, we also want to become a very successful company, and we
Mm,
want to be able to continue to maintain that project. So we had actually some recent conversation internally on what are the principles that guide paid versus open source. And one of the guiding the first one is really Airbyte open source is not a toy. Like Airbyte open source is here to fix and to address the fundamental need that you have for
mm,
doing data movement. So moving data from point A to point B should always be something that is open source. Now, the second principle is more if it serves an organization, if it's a feature that serves an organization, this is when we become a paid product. But the fundamental, the table stake feature of Airbyte are open source.
mm.
And then we have a last principle, which is if we don't know, by default, we make it paid. And as we learn, we continue to keep it paid, or we make it open source. But the fundamentals, Airbyte is not a toy. It has to be a working solution.
When you say, I'm just curious, like, of Michelle, you say it's not a toy. You seem very passionate when you say that. Or if you want to answer that, shoot, John. But what do you mean by it's not a toy?
Exactly. It's not a freeware. Like
Yeah.
people
Mm.
should be able to experience the value of Airbyte and should be able to depend on Airbyte open source. It's not there to just be a side project. It's here to actually be
Yeah.
powering a data stack.
Let me illustrate that. We won't put arbitrary limit on like a said feature on open source. The
Yeah.
feature is either open source or not. So we don't take open source as a way to convert. Like, oh, if you've gone above that limit, now it's paid. We will never do that.
So next question I want to move on to then, okay, is and still regarded to open source, but also in the growth of the company. How has Airbyte's commitment to open source development shaped the company's growth and direction? Because that's unique.
Yeah.
Not everyone starts off as open source, but we did.
Yeah. There is one thing that we keep repeating, which is whenever we think about product development, whenever we think about new features or what are the biggest gap in the product, we have the luxury of having a very active community, which is
Mm,
the moment we have a question, we know that within an hour, we can have an answer, whether it's by asking
mm,
someone in the community or whether it's by digging into our Git. Like we have an amount of insights that a lot of companies have. And anything else? But
That was great.
Yeah, I think the fact that just more people use it because it's free, right? People
yeah,
get more familiar with the product.
and the people who are using it are also, I mean, they're the people that are experts, so
Yeah.
they know what they're looking for. And one of the favorite questions we always have whenever we talk to community member or customer is, if you had a magic wand, what would you build in Airbyte? And that just informs us, and it becomes more like a cultural question that we always ask,
Yeah.
because people then just tell you,
Yeah.
oh, I would love to have quality, I would love to have X, Y, and Z. And for us, it's just more and more feedback. And then after that, it becomes our responsibility to figure out, does it fit into this network and data movement vision, or is it somewhere else? And
Yeah.
just be very focused on the movement part.
I go to a lot of conferences, right? We go to a lot of conferences, and one of the questions I always receive is, "How do you have a job if you're open source? Wait, how do you even get paid?" Right? And so that is why I put this next question: then what both challenges and benefits that you have experienced by choosing the open source path?
I think the main benefit is that you go the distribution channel, in the sense that people will just start using Airbyte open source without having to go to like security compliance and all, like for their own project. So that's why we have, I think, about 6,000 deployments per month today. And the benefit of that is that we have a lot more conversation faster than any other like cloud non-open source companies. That's one thing. And then there's also like engagement of the community. We receive right now 3 to 5 community PRs a day.
Wow.
So the shape of the company is completely different than from a closed source company at that point.
Yeah.
One thing that was very important to us was how to make the open source community successful. So we were I think, not sure, the first company to have a support team dedicated to open source. And we knew that, yes, there won't be revenues, but it's not about revenues. It's about like making those companies successful at it. And now we've been revisiting this because the community has grown so much that we're trying to scale now that. And so we're iterating on all of this. But yes, I think that's has shaped a lot how we think things.
What about challenges? You give it to the CEO. Talk about challenges. Nice. I like that timing.
I mean, challenges, it's always the same. Is open source adoption doesn't mean it's a model of adoption. And when you're starting to also monetize a product, it's a different type of motion. So for us, in a way, we have to do twice the work.
Yeah.
Which is, one, we have to figure out what are our levers to make sure that open source remains like great and people continue to use it and continue to adopt it. And on the other side, we also need to figure out, okay, how do we actually monetize on top of open source? So I think it's in a way for a startup who needs to be very focused on one thing. This is one place where we have to divide our attention and work on both sides. But you can say that the open source also feeds into the commercialization. So in a way, there are bridge between the two. So it's not completely a completely disjoint focus.
I want to ask a question from the community that they've submitted when registering for this call. And I mean, I answered this question a lot at conferences, but to hear both your perspectives is, what makes Airbyte unique from other market tools? There's so many tools out there. So what is it that makes us unique?
Yeah. The first one is, who makes the decision when they bring an infrastructure application or an infrastructure project into an organization? And today it's in the hands of data engineers and engineers. And with Airbyte, we've been able to really touch that community, and we've removed the boundaries for adoption, which is now people don't have to go, as John was saying before, they don't have to go through a lot of approvals. They can, during a hack week, during a hack days, they can do a proof of concept, show the value, and boom, it's done. Now you're part of the infrastructure. And I think that's one of the reasons why we went through this 3,000 daily active users so fast.
You got customizability, flexibility. Like you will never match like a closed source.
Yeah.
The amount of flexibility and control you have with open source. So that's a big one. The second is also there's been a lot about volume-based pricing, a lot of things on pricing and ERT, and having some command, some control over that as well is something that is important. And the reality is that there's a lot of companies as well that, prefer to self-host.
Mm.
It can be for regulatory reasons, or it can be just because they're used to doing this way. And our vision with Airbyte has always been to address every company, every data source, wherever they are. Like, we call that ubiquitous pipeline. And that means we should have a great solution that is cloud hosted, but also self-hosted. So that's has been a focus lately for us.
Definitely.
Maybe just to add, that's a good question. The other one was good as well.
Thank you. So I'm glad to have both of you here. So I want to ask you something interesting. Is how do you go through different opinions, right? You have different opinions on things you want to do. Both of your co-founders of the company.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say one person wants to go one direction, the person wants to go the other direction. How does that work?
Has that happened to us? But it's not like massive for.
So just so you know, we have like weekly one-on-ones.
Yeah.
And we like it lasts 1 year, 1 year, 1.5 hours usually. And we have like 10 to 15 topics every week. And sometimes we're like in disagreement, but what happens is that there was no time, like not one single time where we didn't have the discussion and we didn't find a better solution. And I think like Airbyte's culture has always been about being constructively critical. And that means we think that several heads is better than one head that is missing some perspective. Everybody brings a new perspective,
Yeah.
and can improve the decision in the end. And with that, I think like between us, it has always been like this. We've been always constructive critical and always been open to new ideas. And yeah, so I don't think there was any disagreement that lasted beyond one-on-one actually.
And that's why, like, whenever people ask, like, how do you start a company and all of that, so the most important piece is finding a co-founder that you can communicate with, that you have established a proper way of working together. And with John, we've known each other for 10 years now. So we've had this experience. We know each other, and that is something you don't find your co-founder on Craigslist, basically. I mean, I'm sure some people
on Craigslist
manage to be successful with it, but it's luck. I think it's like a couple. You need to figure out what are the bases for communication, what are the bases for work, and what are weaknesses and strengths on both sides, and take advantage of that.
Talking about weaknesses and strengths, then, how do you complement each other?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the data space for all my life. So since I started my career in 2017. So in terms of the industry, the product, the engineering, this is really my core expertise. John, you want to talk about yours?
I've been into dev tool startups since 2016, and focusing on marketing, product growth, dev community. And so I think like our experience was very complementary in that way. And he brought like I felt the pain of data integration with my last startup, and so we got scarred by this, and we knew which problem space to address definitely. But yeah, that's very relevant in this way.
How do you decide then, you want to work with each other, right? Because I'm sure that's not easy, right?
Well, we tried to work with each other in 2017.
Oh, so you tried to work together before?
Yeah, we knew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why didn't you then?
We kind of, so we had a side project, but I was with my startup, he was with his hyper growth startup. We had 2 kids, young age at the time. Very bad idea to do a side project on the side. We tried for 3 months. We were exhausted. He was more than me. I'm joking.
Did all the coding?
Yeah, he was doing most of the work. So, but at that time, so we knew we wanted to work together, and then there's timing. Timing is luck. And I think that this time we were very lucky. We knew exactly which problem space.
Yeah, timing
was good for both of us, and that's how it happened.
Please. As John said, we tried a few times, and it needs a lot of dedication and time to start a company and a project together. The moment we started to work Airbyte, so way before Airbyte was Airbyte, way before we actually created a company, I was by myself in my living room brainstorming, and then I called John. I say, "Hey, you want to brainstorm together?"
Wow.
and and bit by bit, we just started to just
Mm.
figure out problem space together. But that was I'm not.
So funny story is that I said, okay, let's do that. But I was at the end of my third startup. So I was kind of
Mm.
exhausted.
Yeah.
And I told him, I promised my wife that I would join like an established company. Like we have 2 kids and I won't join you. So I'll help you brainstorm,
And you
but I
decided to
won't
join
join
a
you.
company that didn't make money right off the bat, open source.
So what happened? And this guy knew exactly what was going to happen. And so what happened. It's just that, okay, I became more passionate about what we were doing and I got an offer, a really good offer. And from an intro that he gave me, actually. And in the end, yeah,
Amazing.
just joined.
That's amazing.
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right. So then now going back to Airbyte, right? And focus on more on staying competitive and relevant. The next question I want to ask is, and this is important to me because I work for you. How do you ensure Airbyte remains relevant and innovative, right, in this fast-paced industry of data?
Yeah. So there are a few aspects to how we should be thinking about building product. The first one is, as a company, first you need to have very strong foundation.
Mm.
And for us, the foundation is, how do you move data reliably from point A to point B? And then there is this layer comes on top of it, which is where a lot of the new ideas and a lot of the new innovation is going to come. And that could come from, I don't know, how do you automate the creation of um, of ERDs on your warehouse? And this is a place where today it's a very manual and labor intensive process to
Mhm.
figure out how you interpret data. And I think this is where you need to look at, okay, how are the adjacent industry actually also moving? And here we can talk about AI, which is pretty hyped right now, which is, there is a way to leverage this technology
Mm.
to innovate on top of the raw data movement. And then it becomes our responsibility as engineer, as product, like everyone in the team to understand how is the market evolving and what are these
Yeah.
new tools that are coming into play and how can they play and help us innovate more within Airbyte. But it's just, we, as a startup, we have in a way we don't have a lot of luxury, but we also have the luxury of starting from a blank sheet. So starting with the new trends, starting with something new. And this is something everyone is always looking for. I cannot tell you how many people are today experimenting with, how can I use ChatGPT to generate better documentation, or
Yes.
to improve the documentation, or to just generate schemas and things like that. So
Yeah.
these are the kind of things where we need to bring into Airbyte. And
Mhm.
I'm talking about AI, but it can also be a new quality tool that we want to integrate with, or things like that.
And I do want to go to a question that someone in the community asked as well, which is, are you going to put effort into supporting transformations, right? In ALT transformations.
Yeah. So, at the beginning, we talked about, there is this network piece, the movement, there is the compute piece, and there is the storage piece. And the transformation belongs into the processing
Mm.
and the compute. There are ways we can do a little bit of compute, but we don't want to become like a transformation company. There are
Mm.
other tools that are doing really, really well. And, as a startup, we have to be focused on being good at one thing. Now, what we
Yeah.
can do is integrate
Mhm.
with this solution. And we've already starting to do it with DBT and with other. For us, it's more, how can we be an enabler for this platform? How
Mhm.
can we be an enabler for these tools? So yes, it's top of mind. Yes, we need to understand how we do transformation, but it doesn't mean we have to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And this is something that is always top of mind. And in a way, we have this kind of boundaries in our head on, let's not go too far, because if you
Mhm.
go too far, then you start distracting the team.
And that's probably one of the benefits of being open source is that we allow you to integrate with other tools,
Yeah.
right? With other transformation open source companies out there as well.
Yeah. Now, what we need to do, and we have projects right now that are happening, which is,
Mm.
how do we prepare the data in a way that is clean and and ready for transformation. For example, we talk about normalization a lot, where people say, okay, in some cases normalization is great. I get all my exploded table that makes a lot of sense. And in other cases, it's just, this is an absolute nightmare. Like, why do I have like 500 tables in my warehouse? I don't even know which one to look at.
Yeah.
And this is something that is not good for transformation. So we are not, in a way, we're going against helping people there. So right now we're just looking at, okay, what should normalization actually look like so that people who want to do transformation have a great place to start.
And another way to phrase this is also, well, we look at the use case. The use case is ELT in the end. So how do we make the ELT overall experience easier?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we do it all, but it needs to be efficient, cost effective, all of that, because we can have an impact on all of this. That's how we think about it.
If you want to answer this one, John, sorry, you can't get out this one. and I'm curious, from what you see as well, how do you see the data integration landscape changing over the next few years? Have you both talked about that? Or your opinions?
So going back to what Michel said, at the beginning, you had compute, storage, and network. I think this going like there'll be a going back to fundamentals. Usually, what happens is within industries you have the lozenge where modern data stack has a plethora of new tools, and then it starts consolidating on back to the fundamental. So definitely there'll be a lot of consolidation.
I actually think that AI is going to play a pretty big role.
Yes.
I know you love that concept.
I love AI.
It is going to play a big role because these two industries are feeding on each other, basically, which is to do AI, you need data.
Yeah.
So in a way, Airbyte can power a lot of these new AI tools that are coming into light and just bringing more data to those. But at the same time, AI can help, and it can help like on schema modeling. And we're already seeing tools that are trying to answer questions and generate SQL behind the scene. So giving access to, like making access to data even more ubiquitous within companies. And so this will feed on each other.
Yeah.
And for me, it's really that people, like data is going to become even more accessible than it is today. Like the moment you don't have to write SQL and the moment you can just ask plain English or plain French questions to a
plain English or French
to a data warehouse, then suddenly anyone at the company can understand why something is this way, and that's going to be a big deal. But I think that will be like a bit of a ping pong between the two, and they will both enrich from each other.
I'm really happy you brought up AI because I have a question written in here about that. Do we plan on embracing generative AI wave? Are there any plans about that? Or what are your thoughts on that for the future?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Simple answer. Okay.
Simple answer. The thing is, that's also, I mean, we have to look at what's happening outside. It's if we don't, then we might be building the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So we need to look at what's happening, and then we need to figure out what are opportunities for us to just join forces with this new trend. And right now we're looking at it. We're talking with a few companies. We actually started to use AI within our community Slack. So we know it's very early on. It's very early. Still a lot of progress that needs to be made. But for us, that becomes a tool that helps us and that also helps our community. I know it's not perfect. It's going to get better because it's going to get more data and it's going to get better. So that's how we're going to embrace this. It's a tool for us to help make Airbyte better.
I agree.
Yes. Okay. Like for instance, we're using a tool typically, and we've been using the tool in the Slack community for 3 weeks, and you've got thumbs up, thumbs down from the community.
Yes.
And we see that evolving, like the ratio between both evolving every week, like it's improving every week. It's pretty impressive to see. So I think like, yes, we can be optimistic on how AI can really power a lot of new efficiencies, definitely.
Yeah. And you feel like AI will stick around, right? We had a wave of crypto, right? Now we're in AI, but AI.
Throwing out like all the buzzwords now.
Trying to get to the algorithm on YouTube later. And so I do have another question in regards to really the community. I have a question about the community, which is well, actually no. Before that, I want to ask about just again being co-founders. I look at your schedules. I do peek at it. I put in Google Calendar, and I just see how crazy your schedules are. And how do you maintain like your personal well being? Right? How do you personalize your well being, and then still managing all this all at once? Do you
That
sleep?
is for you, bro.
It's quality over quantity. It's just no, for real. It's something that
Quality of sleep?
no, it's
Oh,
like it's quality of
oh, okay.
interaction you have with people over the quantity.
Mm,
I mean, I'm married. I have 2 kids, and when I'm with them, you can consider that I'm very much disconnected, and people know what are the urgent way to reach out to me, and but I am disconnecting. I'm fully 100%.
yeah.
When I failed at it, you can be sure that both my kids and my wife are telling me, Michel, you're not with us right now. So
Yeah.
that's really the thing is
Mm,
if you go for just the quantity, then it's going to be low quality time, and you will always
yeah.
have either guilt
Mm,
of you're not doing a good job here and you're not doing a good job here.
yeah.
So instead, let's be focused on one thing and do it really
Mm,
well. So for me, that's how I do it. In general, my Saturday are my days where I'm 100% with my family,
yeah.
starting from 10 a.m.
Starting from 10 a.m. Make
Yeah.
sure you get that sleep first.
Yeah, and also because I just do a little bit of Slack and emails before that.
Oh, okay. Amazing.
Same framework, but he's better at it than me.
Exact same thing. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you. Now going to my question about the community, right? Like, how do you see the relationship between Airbyte and its community, our community, evolving in
Yeah.
the future
So
from
at
where it is now?
I think at the beginning, the community was really much online on Slack
Yeah.
and GitHub, obviously, and then we
Mhm.
introduced Discord, so those 3 platforms. And now we're evolving into growing out also out of those platforms. So we're investing a lot more in events, like with thinking about signing a meetup program typically.
Yeah.
We are normally at every conferences about data, we should be there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we also incentive, focusing a lot on the contributor community. For instance, right now you can see we have a contributor program, and so that we can incentivize like
Mm,
people and reward them for like focusing on issues or features that would be more impactful for the overall community. So yeah, that's something to hear.
There is also one thing that right now we're trying to get through, and when you start a community from scratch, the first thing is it's a very two-way communication between Airbyte and between the community.
mhm,
And one thing that we're also doing right now is trying to encourage more of community to community communication, because other community members are seeing problems that we haven't seen on Airbyte. So even if someone comes on our Slack and asks a question, we
yeah.
might not have the answer, but someone from the community will have that answer. So this is something we're really going to push a lot more, and also it makes the open source support to scale way better if
Mhm.
community members can help each other. And we're seeing it. I think last time we were talking with Erica, who is leading our support team, and they did uh, an office hour, and basically 2 community members were just talking to each other on how
Wow.
they managed to solve something, and we want
Yeah.
to make that a more like a behavior that we encourage and that we promote.
Yeah. That's always amazing when the community is actually helping each other,
Yeah.
rather than it's only one way where we're trying to help everyone
Yeah.
that we could hopefully help. Yes.
Add something also. One thing we are investing a lot on is content for the community.
Mm,
And for instance, we actually yesterday we released a content hub instead, like our blog evolved into a content hub that is hosting
check it
more.
out at airbyte.com.
Yep. Under the resource in the header, resource scroll down, where you can see the videos we're doing, notes on articles, thoughts. We're even introducing a new newsletter right now as well. So we're investing a ton on content, and things we will be doing is like education program, university program with certification courses and all that.
Mhm.
And we think that giving to the community is helping the community is a way to get the community to help each other also as well. And we grow the community all together. We grow all together.
Again, check it out at airbyte.com. Now, talking about the future development of Airbyte, right? Are there any features that you're excited about that will hopefully introduce into the Airbyte platform soon?
Yeah. So right now we're still in that phase where a lot of the things that we're doing are very table stake.
Mm.
But when we started Airbyte, we're very intentional about what we were optimizing for, which was we want Airbyte to be easy to adopt. And to do that, we had to make some trade-off on like performances, speed of replication, etc., etc. And over the past 2 quarters, and this is the second quarters, we've made massive improvement in Airbyte's performances. And in a way, performances also have a massive impact on reliability, because the longer a replication takes, the most likely you're going to have a network problem or something that goes wrong in between.
Yeah.
And today, what we have on our benchmark, for example, which is Postgres to Snowflake, that's the benchmark we use, we went from 1 megabyte per second to 5 megabytes per second. And right now we're in the progress of doubling that. And this is something that is very important for us because, yes, because as Airbyte expands and as more people adopt it, we get to touch actually much, much larger data sets. And for us, making the networking piece of the data, which is the movement, reliable, I mean, we have to invest in that, and this is coming up. And it has to be reliable as well. So this is a very big investment from the team. And, one of the reasons also we have cloud is because we also had to learn about what are all these pains that our community is facing. If we don't operate Airbyte at a gigantic scale, we won't know. And we've discovered all these problems, and we've invested massively into those. And same thing, like checkpointing, it's a very big deal for us, which is how do you make sure that whenever a table fails or like a replication fails, that don't just always start from the beginning. So making sure that every time that is spent replicating is useful time instead of wasted.
Yeah.
So these are very big things, and they will allow us to get very, very strong fundamental.
When do you see that happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the checkpointing is here for most right now for most of the destinations.
Yeah.
And the speed, I think we have a good pace right now on just removing all this low hanging fruit and doubling the speed.
Yeah.
So,
Which is exciting.
Yeah.
And so we have a question from the community that's directed towards you. Do you think ETL will one day be much simpler than having to write code?
I mean, it's already the case. We during the move data, we announced that the no code the no code builder was coming up, and it's available today on open source, I think. And same thing for the low code CDK. And the no code feeds on the low code, but there is a very large panel of sources or destinations that can be addressed without code, as long as they follow a similar pattern to other. And that's what we're investing in. Today, I think we have about 80 connectors that are using the low code CDK. And so that's a pretty big achievement. And not only it makes it easier to build, but it's also make it much, much easier to maintain, because you have less judgment or less logic to put into writing a connector. So we're getting there.
When I'm going to these conferences and I bring up the low code TDK UI builder, people are excited about it.
Yeah.
That they don't have to write as much code, or it's easier to maintain as well. So I'm excited to keep letting the world know about it.
And this is one place where we keep getting community feedback, and that helps us create better documentation, better feature. So that's really solid. I mean, I love when our sales engineer just reach out to the engineering team, say, "Oh, this customer is looking for this connector. Can you check that the way I've implemented it in low code makes sense?" And I'm just, this is exactly what you want to get to. Like, people that are technically savvy but that are not engineers can actually start developing and helping other people.
It's exciting.
The connector with the UI is coming on cloud.
It's coming on cloud. Yes. Watch out for an email about that. Amazing. So I really want to go over next. What I want to go over next is over our past year reflections and a few more future strategies. And the first thing I want to ask is, reflecting over the past year, what strategies or initiatives are working well for Airbyte, and why do you think they were successful?
Okay, I think we so for instance, let's say so features, not initiatives.
Strategies or initiatives.
Strategies. For instance, we always had a big focus on content
Mhm.
because we believe that providing value is
Yeah.
what brings trust too, as well. Um, so that's something we've always invested in, and I think we never question that. Like, so that's one thing. Second thing is for us, I think the community is in our methodology. So we have a set of values and we have a set of methodologies. Methodologies are how the company works, and in the methodology, it's really about being focused on the community,
Mm.
and that is like something we say to any new employee first day. Like, we're community powered, but with other communities, not the same. And so we always had an eye like on the community. How can we scale? When have we reached like critical mass and support, or what is the next step to help the community? So we invested always on content, on events, on how the community is evolving, and all of that. Yeah, it's more in our DNA, I'd say, more than strategies. Okay.
There you go.
I think, I mean, cloud is a big one where
Mm.
it was, how do you go from, because if you think about Airbyte, it's still a fairly recent project. I mean, we released it the first time end of 2020. So we're basically 2.5 years in. But if you look at 2022, we're just 1 year in. So how much experience do we have about operating Airbyte? What are our community member actually experiment? Like, what is their experience? How can we create that empathy with our community? And cloud really helped us build that muscle, because now we became almost like we dog food Airbyte to create Airbyte Cloud. So of course we also use Airbyte internally for all our data system.
Yeah.
Come on, we're a data company, so we use the tool we built. But Airbyte Cloud was really learning, what does it mean to operate Airbyte at scale? What does it mean to productionize Airbyte? What does it mean to make Airbyte production great? And for me, that is one of the biggest learning we've had in 2022, because we hit all the walls that our community is hitting when they're working with Airbyte. So we were able to make the platform much better. We were able to make our connectors much better. And we also built like knowledge on operating. Like, what does it mean to have a scalable Kubernetes deployment? What does it mean to do observability on top of Airbyte? What metrics should people be looking at when they start plugging Airbyte into a telemetry system? So this is all things that we've learned, and that made us much closer, because we became our own community member.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Now, there were a bunch of questions submitted in chat, so I want to go through some of them before we run out of time. How does Airbyte plan to address the growing demand for real-time streaming and data integration and processing?
Yeah. So I would say first thing, and this might be a controversial answer, is real time is not, it's not an engineering definition. It's a business definition. Very often when we talk to community member or to customer and say, oh, we need real time integration. And then you start digging and say, okay, if the data arrives every 30 minutes, is that real time enough? And say, oh, of course, yeah, if it comes every hour, it's okay. So we always need to be very, like, this is something where we need to be very precise about how we define those terms, because every company have different definition.
Yeah, they define it differently.
Yeah. And yes, we want to be able to support streaming ingestion, because this is one way of ingesting data. Now, do we do delivery real time? This is another question, because there is also a lot of challenges that come from building a streaming system. It's just generally, it's about ingesting ephemeral data. So if it fails, boom, all this data is gone. You cannot recover it anymore. So for us, it's more like what we build after the fundamentals of data integration, so that we can build this layer that is extremely reliable, never fails, if it's a thing that exists. And it's definitely something we will address.
And another question that someone asked, which is, and it's about the Airbyte API. Will the Airbyte API used currently for open source will be supported in the future?
That's a good question. So the Airbyte config API is really meant for managing Airbyte. And in a way, it's a way to start having like this programmatic use of Airbyte. Now the question, and this is something we're discussing internally, is how do we, like today we have two APIs. We have one that we want to make it very stable, where people know to expect if they are breaking, what to expect if there are breaking exchanges, etc., etc. And the config API where we take a lot of freedom in breaking it because we needed to create Airbyte and to make Airbyte better. So I think right now there is a balance on how do we advertise about the config API and how do we talk about the stable API. But these are internal conversations we're having.
So the summary is, if you start building on one of the APIs, choose the Airbyte API, not the config API. And we'll also be building a Terraform SDK, a CLI out of that. So for instance, we have a better CLI inventories and Octavia CLI, which will be kind of as config API.
And then another one about this, since the API recently released, another question that they have about the API is, now that the API has been released, are there any plans for a Terraform provider in the works?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's in alpha.
It's in alpha. Okay, it's in alpha. And oh yes, Michelle.
We're not putting it right now. I mean, I think we have two people at Airbyte today that are trying to migrate some of the pipelines we have at Airbyte to use the Terraform provider. So
any timeline.
but that's the thing is, because we're users of Airbyte, we can also test the features before we release them. And Terraform is an important one for us. It's something that was asked for quite a while, but the config API was too brittle at that time for us to build something more mature on top of it.
We have one more question about the API is, when would OAuth 2 support be implemented for API sources?
On open source?
On open source.
So today in a way, we support OAuth for sources. It's just that because we cannot own, I mean, in general, when you have an OAuth authentication for sources, it means that you've created an application somewhere on the source side, so that they know that Airbyte is going to be connecting on behalf of a customer. On open source, we cannot create that app. It's up to our users. So this is one place where, yes, when you use open source, this is something you have to manage yourself, where you have to create your own app on Google Analytics or on Asana or any other source provider, and you need to create it yourself. So for this one, the experience is going to be what we have as the operator of Airbyte, which is we do the same on our side, but we cannot really offer that on open source because it's technically not feasible. We cannot create application on your behalf if you're an open source user.
Yeah. I have two more questions, almost done. One question I want to ask is, how do you intend to position yourself against, let's say, Fivetran? And this is a submitted question. I didn't ask this, which seems to have a very aggressive customer acquisition strategy.
Yeah. We talk to the people who are using and that are doing data every single day. And we are building a solution that they love. And we have a much more bottom-up adoption to the product rather than top-down. And for us, it's our way into all these companies. And as long as people like and love the product, we'll always be winning on that front.
I'll try not to be too aggressive. But I would say Fivetran's machine works with their pricing, which is very, very high, as everybody knows. But if you come down and reduce also the costs of all your ELT needs, at that point you kind of break the machine too, in the sense that, well, their cost of acquisition cannot be that high anymore. So that's when bottom-up, long-term, when you look at it long-term, bottom-up always wins against top-down, because you do bottom-up, and once you're inside, then you can talk to the top people and close the deal. That's the best way to close the deal, and that wins. So if you're not too concerned, just
not concerned. I like that.
We believe, in a sense, we believe that open source is the way to actually address ELT. Question of time.
So we have one last question, and this is from the community. Is, if we want to use Airbyte for production, is Airbyte open source fine, or should we be using Airbyte Cloud for better support?
Well, we now offer a premium support on top of open source. Don't hesitate. You go on pricing, self-manage, talk to the team. So we can definitely help. Now it's a question whether or not you want to manage by yourself or not. So really a question of that. If you want to do it, you will have direct access to the team with some SLA. So we can help you do that. If you don't want to take any engineering time, then cloud is the way.
Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this call. I know you're both very busy. And everyone, if you want to watch this video again, we will put up on YouTube by Friday. Thank you, everyone.